So the Trump administration, just over a year ago, proposed opening up 90% of U.S. waters to offshore drilling. So that's, Maine to Florida, the eastern Gulf of Mexico, that's been off limits, kind of the Gulf side of Florida, the West Coast from California to Alaska. A pretty huge overreach in our opinion. And the way this works is the executive branch, the Department of Interior, the president's staff, creates a 5-year leasing plan. This is the mechanism by which oil drilling is opened. So as of today, there's remnant drilling in California that's over 30 years old. There's drilling in the Gulf, and there's some drilling in Alaska. The eastern seaboard right now is free of offshore drilling, and as is the Pacific Northwest coast. So that's the threat. We keep learning this lesson, right? Like there's drilling is spilling, as we say. So there's both catastrophic spills, the BP oil spill in the Gulf being an obvious one, Exxon Valdez. There was one in San Francisco Bay when a tanker crashed into a bridge, the Costco Busin. 2015, there was a pretty big 350,000 gallon spill in Santa Barbara. So these are happening, and they're catastrophic. But there's small scale spilling every day. Over 10,000 small oil spills in the Gulf of Mexico since BP.
Wow.
So it's chronic. And then you have the infrastructure, the refineries, and all of the coastal infrastructure, the piers, the pipelines that go into this on top of that, not to mention global warming and climate change and all the other things. So, huge impacts to our coastline. And at the end of the day, we don't need it. We're exporting more oil than we're bringing in. That oil isn't U.S. oil. Those companies can, take that oil and sell it to anyone they want. And tourism and recreation is about 12 times bigger, larger economy than offshore drilling. And the claim of jobs is sort of also false because they're highly specialized jobs. They're going to be people from Texas flying into your coastlines to work off. It's not like the mom and pop are going to pick up a job on an oil rig. So I think coastal communities sort of have nothing to gain and everything to lose. And I think that's why you see this bipartisan opposition. So, if you run a restaurant, a pier concession, a hotel on the coast, on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, there's very little upside, regardless of your political ideology, to having offshore drilling off your coastline, and there's a lot of potential downside. So we've seen coastal communities across the U.S. Pass resolutions. In fact, every single coastal community in South Carolina in 2015, when Obama considered the same thing, passed a resolution in opposition to drilling. Your hometown at Wilmington did the same, which something that Surfrider was involved in. And so we really have seen it's the encouraging part, pretty massive opposition. Almost every coastal governor, with the exception of a couple, Alaska, Maine, and Georgia, have, and I don't know if that's changed since last fall's election, but have been opposed to offshore drilling. So, the impacts are pretty obvious, and the threat isn't worth the costs aren't worth the benefits, and so that's why we're out there, opposing this. That said, powerful interests with hundreds of millions of dollars pushing for this in DC, and that's part of the reason why, and an administration that is supportive. So we're trying to build a groundswell of local and state level opposition to pressure the decision makers to keep our coastline safe and not open up drilling